In 1848, John Jacob Astor, the founder of the first old money family in America, was dying in the splendor of his Astor Mansion in New York City. He uttered the words, "Make it grow," as his life flickered like a fading candle, passing on not only his immense fortune, but also the seeds of a transatlantic empire to his son, William. Join us as we explore the incredible story of the Astor family, from the dusty roads of rural Germany to the peaks of American society. In 1763, a boy was born in the charming rural area of Waldorf, which is situated near the regal city of Heidelberg, in what is now contemporary Baden-Württemberg, Germany. This boy would go on to redefine American fortune. The youngest child of Johann Jakob Astor, an ordinary butcher, and Maria Magdalena Vomberg, the infant was named John Jacob Astor. John Jacob, at 16, fled his pastoral homeland for the vibrant metropolis of London, driven by his adolescent ambition and restless spirit. At that time, he pursued the craft of musical instrument making under the guidance of his uncle. Astor's proficiency in English was not only refined by the splendor of London, but he also received a rigorous apprenticeship in the business world. As Astor headed for the United States in 1784, his pockets were brimming with little more than aspirations and a collection of flutes for sale, marking a pivotal chapter in his life. He established a modest, ambitious fur business in New York City, where he had relocated. The Jay Treaty of 1794 opened Canadian borders to American merchants and served as a catalyst for Astor, offering him a golden opportunity to establish what would become America's first old money family.
Well, let me introduce you to the border.
In an era when America was barely 20 years old, Astor had accrued a fortune of $6 million by the turn of the century, a staggering sum. He was the fur trade's luminary and reigned paramount. Unsatisfied with his fur fortunes, Astor diversified his portfolio by trading furs for Chinese tea and investing significantly in Manhattan's burgeoning real estate market. This made him a prominent figure in fur transactions in China. In the interim, Henry, John Jacob's sibling, contributed a distinctive chapter to the Astor family legacy as a fellow German immigrant and equine racing enthusiast. In 1788, he bought Messenger, a thoroughbred that had traveled from England to America. This illustrious steed would further ingrain the Astors in the fabric of American culture by siring all standard-bred horses in America. The search for a proficient governor for the expansive American territories was initiated by the death of Meriwether Lewis in 1809. Ever the opportunist, Astor proposed a daring plan to monopolize and extend the fur trade to the Pacific. Wilson Price Hunt, a St. Louis industrialist, was hired by him to supervise an overland expedition to the Columbia River. Even though the voyage was littered with disastrous decisions, it inadvertently resulted in seminal discoveries, establishing the Oregon Trail as we know it today. This audacious endeavor further solidified the Astor name as a symbol of American prosperity and pioneering. This endeavor established the groundwork for the American expansion of Oregon and Washington. By the 1820s, Astor's empire had virtually monopolized the fur trade and was one of the largest enterprises in the emerging United States. However, in 1834, the renowned Astor, recognizing the changing trends of fashion and the decreasing prevalence of fur, opted to exit the company he had established, causing it to disintegrate in his absence. However, by then, Astor had already established himself as the world's wealthiest man and the first multi-millionaire in the United States. The death of John Jacob Astor on March 29, 1848, marked a significant era. He passed away as the wealthiest individual in the United States, leaving behind an astonishing $20 million fortune. To put this immense wealth into perspective, if we compare Astor's fortune to the GDP of America at that time, his net worth today would be equivalent to $121 billion, thereby positioning him in the same stratum of modern billionaires such as Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos.
Our next generation has 22 degrees of freedom. It will be able to play the piano. So it's really like, wow.
John Jacob Astor's philanthropic prowess was equally noteworthy as his fortune. He committed $400,000 to establish the Astor Library, an esteemed institution that would subsequently merge with the Lenox Library to form the iconic New York Public Library. This sum was substantial at the time. Despite his substantial wealth, not all Astor descendants were expected to inherit equally. From the moment of his birth, John Jr., the firstborn son of John Jacob, was beset by a combination of mental and physical ailments that were disheartening. As a result, John Jacob's will only provided him with a modest sum, sufficient to ensure his survival during the difficult times ahead. Consequently, William, the second son of John Jacob Astor, was entrusted with most of the family fortune and the fate of the empire. This strategic decision established William Astor as the next formidable player on the grand chessboard of old money dominance, a game of familial intrigue that the Astor family would masterfully play. Now, William Backhouse Astor Sr., who was named after his father's merchant acquaintance, William Backhouse, would demonstrate his capabilities as a formidable partner in his father's thriving export enterprise throughout his long life. Throughout this period, he meticulously directed capital towards Manhattan's lucrative real estate market. William expanded the empire's real estate portfolio by constructing more than 700 stores and residences in the rapidly growing New York City, bolstered by his family's already legendary business reputation. Particularly, his activities in the vicinity of Central Park resulted in an exponential increase in the family's assets. William, himself an astute operator, not only preserved the Astor fortune, but also increased it. His diligent efforts, which culminated in a monumental estate valued at nearly $50 million, gave his family even greater prosperity. It was as if Midas had imparted his golden touch to the subsequent Astors, who wielded this gift with adept precision. Nevertheless, William's most significant decision in the long trajectory of family law was not in business, but in his personal life, a defining characteristic of old money dynasties: strategic intermarriage. He married Miss Margaret Alida Rebecca Armstrong on May 20, 1818, who was the daughter of Senator John Armstrong, Jr., and Alida, the sister of Horatio Gates Armstrong. The renowned Livingston clan was her maternal lineage. Her mother was the youngest child of the eminent jurist Robert Livingston and his wife, Margaret. Her lineage encompassed notable figures such as Secretary of State Edward Livingston and founding father Robert R. Livingston. Conversely, her father, John Armstrong, Jr., was the second Secretary of War under President James Madison. William and Margaret's impressive progeny would result in a third generation of Astors poised to guide their colossal empire. John Jacob Astor III, born on June 10, 1822, on a balmy summer's day, would flourish as an American financier, generous benefactor, and soldier in the American Civil War, thereby continuing to construct the rich tapestry of the Astor legacy. This union strengthened the Astor's financial empire and solidified their status as American aristocracy, a dynasty that was inextricably linked to the nation's elite. John Jacob Astor III's exceptional business acumen enhanced his personal fortune and established him as the wealthiest member of his generation within the Astor lineage. By the conclusion of his term, he had increased the family's assets to a staggering $75 million to $100 million, which is equivalent to approximately $2.5 to $3.5 billion in current currency. However, this wealth could be comparable to $80 or $90 billion in today's economies, given the significantly reduced GDP of the US at that time. John III's most significant accomplishment was establishing the English branch of the Astor dynasty. This strategic expansion solidified the Astor name among the British nobility, creating an enduring legacy that remains a source of pride in aristocratic circles today. Moving on to another branch of the family tree, Laura Eugenia Astor, the daughter of William and Margaret, was born in 1824. On September 17, 1844, she married Franklin Hughes Delano, a man with a very American name. This unexpected turn of events would establish a connection between the Astors and another echelon of what could be regarded as the closest thing to nobility in America: the Roosevelts. Franklin Hughes, after all, was the namesake of the future U.S. President, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Franklin Hughes Delano's lineage could be traced back to Philip Delano, an immigrant who set foot in Plymouth, Massachusetts in 1621. This union further strengthened the Astor's bond with America's founding stock. This connection further solidified the Astor legacy as American nobility by interweaving it with the foundational threads of American history. The narrative now concentrates on William Astor Jr., who carries on the distinguished American legacy of his forebears. However, it was his wife, the formidable Caroline Schermerhorn, who genuinely influenced the foundation of New York's high society. Caroline, or Lena, as she was more affectionately known, was born on September 22, 1830, into the privileged strata of New York's Dutch aristocracy. She was a Schermerhorn, a family descended from the city's earliest settlers. Abraham Schermerhorn, her father, had accumulated a fortune in shipping with a net worth of $500,000. This sum was substantial at the time, and it is equivalent to $13.74 million today. Helen Van Cortlandt, née White, was a member of the distinguished Schermerhorn family. In 1853, Caroline Schermerhorn and William Astor Jr., the descendants of John Jacob Astor, were united in a harmonious union by fate. In 1862, the couple commissioned a fashionable four-bay brownstone townhouse at 355 Fifth Avenue, an address that would subsequently serve as the location of the iconic Empire State Building. This event was a fascinating chapter in history. Contrary to the prevailing belief that she prioritized high society over her family, Mrs. Astor dedicated a significant amount of time to the administration of her household and family during her tenure as a mother of young children. Furthermore, her parents' substantial inheritance provided her with a degree of financial autonomy that was uncommon for women of her generation. With the passage of time, Caroline Astor's circle of influence, which was appropriately named the 400, became a fundamental component of New York's Gilded Age society. The city's population experienced a significant increase after the Civil War, as affluent migrants and immigrants challenged the traditional stronghold of the New York elite. Caroline Astor expertly curated and led the elite circles of New York, securing the Astors' position at the pinnacle of American high society by collaborating with the esteemed social arbitrator, Ward McAllister, who was akin to Samuel Cutler Ward, who had joined the Astor dynasty through marriage. Mrs. Astor proceeded to establish the standards of propriety and determine who was eligible to participate in their esteemed social community. McAllister famously asserted that only 400 individuals genuinely qualified as members of fashionable society in the splendor of Gilded Age New York. Mrs. Astor, regarded as the queen of society, solidified her exclusive circle by organizing a grand annual gala on the third Monday of January.
Assuming the title of the Mrs. Astor.
A golden ticket that confirmed one's status within the dazzling hierarchy of New York society was considered the ultimate distinction, securing an invitation. Caroline Astor's impeccable grace, scrupulous discretion, and demeanor, which skillfully avoided controversy, was celebrated during this era. Her reserved demeanor concealed a certain detachment. She was not inclined to engage in casual conversation or disclose personal information. Her social domain was impregnable, a rigid bastion of old money that remained steadfastly unyielding amidst the maelstrom of changing times and values. However, the Astor's reputation was widely recognized beyond their homeland, despite their steadfast adherence to tradition. Their names became synonymous with the pinnacle of the elite, captivating the global elite with their scandals and splendor. A prime example of this was the controversy surrounding Lady Caroline's attire, which provided the international press with tremendous entertainment. Under suspicion of luxury duty evasion, government agents collected Caroline Astor's extravagant gowns, which were intricately adorned with apple green silk velvet and opulent ostrich feathers. As the world watched to determine whether Astor would submit to the imminent charges of $300 to $400, months of speculation ensued. Lady Astor's garments were ultimately auctioned off, despite her resolute defiance. Interestingly, it could be argued that the Astors meticulously cultivated their image as old money, deftly steering public perception and distinguishing themselves from newer affluent groups. Through their meticulous maneuvers, they not only preserved, but also improved their status as exemplars of upper-crust society. The intricate relationship between the Vanderbilts and the Astors was the pinnacle of this dynamic. The Vanderbilts, who were renowned for their recently acquired wealth, particularly from railroads, exemplified a style of opulence that the Astors regarded as nouveau riche and gauche. Mrs. Astor, in particular, was initially hesitant to associate with the Vanderbilt daughters due to her distaste for the source of their riches. However, In 1883, she was compelled to formally recognize the socially prominent Alva Erskine Smith, who was the spouse of William Kissam Vanderbilt. This action granted the Vanderbilts access to the upper echelons of society. An opulent costume gala was organized by Alva Vanderbilt at her residence, but she intentionally excluded Caroline Astor's youngest daughter, Lena, as Mrs. Astor had not extended a formal visit. This story is widely known in high society circles. Lady Astor extended an olive branch and attended Alva's grand gala, anticipating the strategic advantage of the Vanderbilts' alliance in maintaining the exclusivity of New York's high society, as she observed the Vanderbilts ascend. Subsequently, the Vanderbilts were frequently extended invitations to Lady Astor's annual soiree, which affirmed their formal ascension into New York's elite. The mantle of the reigning monarch of New York society was too burdensome for a single individual. Mrs. Astor's son, John Jacob Astor IV, a businessman of exceptional talent, writer, and military officer in the Spanish-American War, died tragically in the Titanic's catastrophe sinking within the same orbit of power and influence. Astor was not only the wealthiest individual on the ill-fated voyage, but also one of the wealthiest men in the world during his time, with an estimated value at approximately $87 million, which is equivalent to $2.64 billion in today's dollars. Simultaneously, the Astor lineage was further elevated through the illustrious titles of Viscount Astor and Baron Astor of Havre, highlighting its prestige across the Atlantic. In 1891, William Waldorf Astor, an affluent American, made the bold decision to relocate to British soil. He subsequently acquired British citizenship in 1899. He was granted a baronage in 1916 and was promoted to a viscountcy the following year in recognition of his significant contributions to wartime charities. The Viscount Astor was born on a summer afternoon in 1917, a title that was granted by the peerage of the United Kingdom. This event eternally intertwined the Astors with the annals of British nobility. John Jacob Astor, the fourth son of William Waldorf Astor and the first Viscount Astor, was granted the title of Proprietor Astor of Havre in 1956, a title that was established within the United Kingdom's peerage. Astor was a conservative politician and influential newspaper proprietor. Today, the influence of certain Astor descendants, including William Astor, 4th Viscount Astor, is still felt, particularly in the British House of Lords. However, the family wealth has deteriorated over time, resulting in certain heirs experiencing financial hardship. The family's 420-acre estate, which is currently exhibiting symptoms of neglect due to insufficient maintenance funds, serves as a poignant symbol of this decline. Consequently, the Astor name, previously associated with America's affluent upper strata, has gradually lost its prestige, despite the fact that their influence on the American milieu and the panorama of New York City is irrevocable. Their once esteemed status has experienced a gradual decline. However, despite their declining fortune and influence, the Astor lineage has left an indelible legacy on the city that never sleeps. The Astor insignia is prominently displayed on numerous streets, buildings, and enterprises throughout the cityscape. The modern St. Regis Hotel and the Astor, as well as other landmarks, serve as reminders of their former splendor. As a result, the narrative of the Astor family's transition from new money to old money poignantly reminds us of the significance of diversification and the transience of time and success. The Western world will always hold the name Astor in high regard, regardless of one's success. And now, we'd like to hear from you in the comments. Were you aware that the Astors were indeed America's first old money family? Additionally, which old money family would you like us to feature next? We can't wait to hear from you. And as always, thank you for your continued viewership here at Old Money Luxury. Cheers, until next time.